July 22nd, 2014. A man walks into the Puerto Rican treasury, holding a winning ticket. On paper, his ticket is worth just a single dollar, but when he hands it over to the clerk, something strange happens. He is handed back a check for $10,000. This wasn't just a one-time error. In fact, the Puerto Rican state-run lottery was currently bleeding cash at an alarming rate, and no one knew why. No missing tickets, no suspicious winners, no evidence of fraud. On paper, everything was normal. But behind the scenes, someone was rewriting the rules of the game. After a string of covert investigations and the involvement of the FBI, they would soon uncover that behind all of this was the cartel, and money was just the beginning. In the end, the FBI indicted 10 individuals and seized $127 million. But the question remains, how did they do it? This video is based on a Darknet Diaries episode. While the story is mostly based on the guest's personal account, only the official indictments confirm the events discussed. To understand this in further detail, I suggest you check this episode out for yourself in the description below.
Amount of $2.04 billion. Get your tickets out, let's play.
State lotteries are designed to generate revenue for governments, often funding public services like education and infrastructure. In fact, the US alone generates over $80 billion annually from ticket sales. This is a very good opportunity for Puerto Rico, where economic struggles have strained public services for years. So, in 1934, the Department of Treasury established the Puerto Rican State Lottery, and for decades, payouts were never more than the amount of money generated through ticket sales. But suddenly, things started to go wrong. Millions of government funding was being siphoned through the state lottery payouts. This had a toll on the governor, the man with the highest executive authority in the country, and he decided he has had enough. He calls a consulting firm and asks for their best talents to be sent over. At the forefront of this response team is a former Marine penetration tester that we will refer to as Owl Stalker, or Oz for short. This is to protect his identity as requested. Oz and his team sat around the table, alongside the governor. He explains the problem he is facing and how it is costing him thousands of dollars a month. The team starts thinking, what are the possible reasons behind the losses? A forensic accountant amongst them goes through the Treasury financial ledger, analyzing ticket sale revenue and ticket payouts to spot any unusual patterns. Sure enough, thousands of dollars were paid out and were bought, confirming the significant losses. But all of it looked legitimate, real tickets, paying real money to real winners, and nothing suspicious at all. The team had concluded there were no issues with the ledgers, so they shifted their focus to the physical process of the lottery drawing. Unlike other lotteries, Puerto Rico used small plastic balls that have a hole through the center, allowing them to be stored on metal rods. These rods were kept in wooden shelves at the back of the lottery office, each one holding up to 10 rods, and each rod secured with its own lock. The balls seemed fine. None were an odd weight or size that could change the chance of them being drawn. Oz was then given a full list of names of everyone who had access to the lottery equipment. This allowed the team to then audit the drawing process further, tracing the storage and transport days before to the day of. Oz was given clearance to actually walk out with the balls the day of the drawing.
So we walked the balls out with the actual employee. There was 2 employees that were assigned to do nothing but manage the lottery balls. That's it. Like, that was their sole job.
On the day of the drawing, 4 analysts oversaw the process to ensure fairness and accuracy. The lottery balls were placed in a hopper, randomly drawn and recorded by a panel of employees. Each ball was documented, secured in a designated tray, and maintained under a strict chain of custody. Then, analysts reviewed video footage to verify the results before entering them into the lottery's database. The final numbers were then shared with the government's printing group and published in newspapers and televised broadcasts. Convinced the system was tamper-proof, they deemed it fair and secure, but the process didn't end there. There was one department in charge of the drawing, but the treasury was in charge of the payouts. So they reviewed this process next. The treasury confirmed that the winning numbers matched up with what was drawn. Next, this is then checked against a database full of every single lottery ticket purchased. It takes the winning numbers and updates all the tickets in the database to indicate if the ticket is a winner and the amount they will be paid out. Oz goes and meets with the team that manages this database to inspect the process further.
The database administrator goes, "Who are you and why are you here? Who's authorized you to be in here to audit me? I know how to do my job. Leave me alone." And really was like standoffish. And I'm like, that's a little odd, right?
Despite the odd encounter, a database professional on the team stated that everything was solid and no vulnerabilities were present. Tickets were updated properly and no payouts were made for losing tickets. They then audited the ticket stations where the tickets would be bought and cashed in. However, this too seemed fine. Nothing strange or unusual in this process either. Oz and his team decided to look at the ledger once more to see how much money was missing while they had watched the process. But strangely, ever since they started investigating the process, there were no longer any losses in money, whereas the weeks prior showed slow trickles of money leaving the lottery system. They then realized that this hard stop in losses occurred when they first sat down with the database team. They start suspecting the possibility of an insider. They deliver this news to the governor.
And so we take this all back to the governor and we're like, man, the only thing that this is pointing to, you've got an insider somewhere. And we don't know what it is. It's on the digital element. And the governor of Puerto Rico looks at me and the team and goes, "I know you're here for security elements. Go do whatever you have to do to figure this out. You are indemnified of any digital crime or physical crime on the island to figure out how the hell I'm losing this money."
Oz now has full indemnity and has the ability to investigate this case however he wants, even if it requires breaking the law. The first thing Oz does after he's granted indemnity is notify the FBI field office on the island, which exists due to Puerto Rico being territory of the US. He notifies them of his investigation, and they give Oz the green light to go and investigate however he needs to. So, he changes up his appearance and walks right back into the Treasury building, where the lottery payout system was held. He knew that if he had requested authorization to log into the systems, this would once again tip off the insider of his presence, causing them to back down on their operation. So he needed to do this covertly. In his backpack, 2 laptops, a lockpick set, a pocket knife, and a flashlight. He is ready to infiltrate.
There was a door where I knew the finance office was. And I was like, I wonder if that's where they keep physical financial records. Might be a computer in there that's unlocked, right?
He attempted to open the door, but it was locked. So he then pulls out his lockpick set, and after a short while, he gets the lock open. Oz was correct. The finance office did have physical records. He was also correct that there were computers inside, but what he hadn't considered was the possibility of people also being inside.
And so 4 people turn the around and look at me and go, "What are you doing here? How did you open that door? That door is supposed to be locked." And I'm like, "Oh."
Oz simply leaves back into the hallway and closes the door, scrambling to find a cover-up story for his intrusion. One of the men amongst the 4 was the director of finance for the entire government of Puerto Rico. He goes out and confronts him. Because Oz had been there before, he remembers that the floor above is where the passport office is located.
And I'm like, "Hey, I was told to come here because this is the passport office." And he was like, "That door was not unlocked." I was like, "It was, I just pushed on it."
Oz gets escorted to the passport office, and after 30 minutes of waiting inside, he leaves, as he had already attracted enough attention. The next day, he returns, but this time, he goes to the 3rd floor, which appears to be a lunchroom area. He walks around the hallways on the 3rd floor until he sees another door. He puts his ear up to the door No noises are coming from the inside. He pulls out his lockpicks and starts working on the lock. After a few minutes, he was in. He opened the door to a desolate room, covered in dust. On the right, 3 PCs lined up in a row, with plastic pulled over them. Oz pulls out his flashlight and makes his way to the computers. One is running. If this computer is connected to the lottery network, he can use this to watch and gather data through a man-in-the-middle technique, which is a cyber attack that intercepts traffic being sent through a network. He sets his laptop against the door as a makeshift alarm. He sits at the computer and is presented with a login screen. He tries all the basic passwords, but after a series of failed attempts, Oz was worried that he would cause suspicion from multiple failed login attempts, so he went back to his hotel to rethink and strategize. He comes back the next day with Metasploit on a USB stick, which is a toolkit that holds numerous exploits. Using this toolkit, he was able to bypass the Windows 98 login screen and got full access to the computer. He checks if the computer has access to the lottery network. It did. With full access to the computer, Oz started exploring his options. He returns the next day with another USB drive, reconnected the machine, and launches Nmap, a tool used to scan networks. What he found was shocking. The network had no security barriers, meaning he could move freely across the entire network. Realizing it was too risky to keep sneaking in, he sets up a reverse shell, allowing him to control the computer remotely from his hotel. Back in his room, he scans the lottery network and finds something interesting: a web server running an outdated version of Drupal. Drupal is a system used to build and manage websites, similar to WordPress. Knowing Drupal had known security flaws, he checked for vulnerabilities, found an exploit, ran it, and it worked.
And I was like, holy yes. And literally, like, the whole team was sitting around the table, and I'm sitting there I'm drinking a Mai Tai at this point. I'm like, yes, like, check this out. And, like, I'm doing my due diligence of screenshots and all that other shit, right? And they're like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. And so, like, I do general commands to show, like, who am I, like, and it shows, like, root. Yeah, and then I actually do, like, a dump of basically the file structure and show that it's actually the Puerto Rican web server, right? Not just some random server, dude. Start pinging internal IP addresses that they had already grabbed forensic images off of as well, too. And they're like, holy shit. And they're like, yeah, from the hotel Wi-Fi, bro. What's up?
Oz had hacked directly into the Puerto Rican government's web server from his hotel Wi-Fi, and he had full control as root, the highest level of access possible. He is now able to route traffic from the lottery network to his own Linux server, so they begin watching the traffic, day in and day out. They knew that the lottery payouts didn't start until the morning after the drawing, but something strange appears in the logs. A login from an IT staff member the night before payouts begin. This wasn't normal. Upon hearing this, the governor forced the chief information officer to give full access to the mainframe, where the lottery database was stored. The CIO was even placed on temporary leave. With full administrative access, Oz and his team set up monitoring tools and began watching every transaction in real time. The database kept records of every ticket scanned, whether it was a winner, and how much was paid out. At first, everything looked normal. Winning tickets were cashed, payouts were logged. But then, they caught something. A winning ticket that should have paid $1 was changed to $10,000. The transaction processed at the inflated amount, but immediately after, the number in the database was switched back to $1, erasing all traces of the fraud. This was the smoking gun. Someone inside the lottery's IT team was sneaking in, editing the payouts, waiting for the money to be collected, and then covering their tracks. That's why audits never found anything. The evidence was being wiped in real time. Oz now had proof somebody inside the lottery's IT team was rigging payouts and covering their tracks. They now know how the fraud worked, but not who was behind it. The fraudulent changes were being made under a generic service account, meaning no name was tied to them. However, Oz knew that the only way to access this database was to physically log in from the data center. So they pulled up the security footage and rewound it to the exact timestamp the changes were made. There he was.
We'd see him walk into the server room like 2 seconds later, log into the mainframe, be there for a few minutes, and then leave.
The timestamps matched perfectly. Every unauthorized database change aligned with his movements. This explains what was happening inside the network. But what about outside? How were they cashing in these inflated tickets? Oz discovered that minutes before a payout, the insider would edit a ticket's value. The person would then cash it in. The clerk would see the inflated amount, $10,000 instead of $1. After the payout went through, the insider quickly changed the value back, leaving no trace in the system. Oz contacted the FBI subsequent to his findings, which is when things took a dangerous turn. The FBI warns Oz that cartels on the island are aware of his investigations, and that the team had to lay low and move carefully. This was because the insider wasn't merely just a technician. He was also running drugs for a local cartel, using his pilot's license to transport drugs from island to island. Because of the attention Oz had garnered from the cartel, the FBI couldn't meet up with him directly, as the cartel was already aware of Oz and monitoring the field office very closely. So they arranged to meet up with Oz at a food court inside the Puerto Rico Mall and retrieve the evidence from him there. Oz arrives at the food court with the evidence on a thumb drive and sees 2 FBI agents in casual clothes. They get their food, and one of the agents asks Oz,
We're walking with the trays, and he's like, you got that thumb drive? Just drop it on my tray while we're walking. And then I do. He grabs it, puts it in his pocket, and we go sit down and eat lunch. Kind of wild, right? It's like, what the
Oz was now in monitored custody. FBI agents would follow him everywhere he went. At this point, the Bureau had taken over the investigation, and they discovered that the insider Oz had identified was a man named Wilfredo Eli Rivera Zayas, who was linked to a local cartel that was actively smuggling drugs. From the evidence given, the FBI were able to conclude that the cartel was using winning lottery tickets to launder money. Here's how. Wilfredo, the IT insider, would create winning tickets, which were then sold to cartel members at a 20% markup. The cartel did this to legitimize their illicit cash. Once the tickets were cashed in, they received a check from the Puerto Rico lottery, which they deposited into their bank accounts. This allowed them to legally declare the money and make it appear legitimate. At this point, Oz was safely extradited off the island because he had just interrupted a huge cartel operation. The FBI carries out the takedown, indicting 10 people. Among them was Wilfredo, the IT insider, and 3 cartel members that would purchase tickets off of Wilfredo. In total, the FBI believed that these 10 people illicitly generated $127 million from the sale of drugs, weapons, and lottery tickets.